Are you an investigative professional? Did you know you can find the best private investigator resources using investigatorstoolbox.com? This resource community was built exclusively for licensed investigators and investigative professionals. You can network directly with members, educate yourself through free webinars and blogs, and even create your own customizable research library. Membership starts for as little as 49 cents a day. Download the Investigator's Toolbox app or visit our webpage at www.investigators-toolbox.com.
Is a good case management system keeping you from taking your business to the next level? Crosstracks is the premier case management system for the investigative community. They're the only SOC 2 certified case management software available. Visit crosstracks.com, tell them you're a listener, and save even more. Get a plan in place for the new year to grow your business to the next level. Welcome to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. Our guest today is John Swanson. Matt met John a few weeks back at the Maryland State Association event. Shout out to Caitlin Kelly, who suggested that Matt and John should chat. We're talking accident video enhancement and other video technology today. So please welcome John Swanson and your host, private investigator Matt Spaier.
Welcome everybody to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. Today I am pleased to welcome John Swanson to the program. John and I met a couple weeks ago back at the Maryland conference, the MESA conference. And Caitlin, the gal who was putting it together, says, you got to talk to John. You guys need to get together and do something. So here we are talking today. So John, I want to welcome you to the program. How are you?
Great, thank you. I'm doing well, thanks. Glad to be here. Since we met the other week, I've been excited to have the opportunity to come on and talk to you.
Yeah, so your company is SEA Limited. And we're going to dive into exactly what you guys do, which is a little bit of everything forensically, which I thought was really neat. But before we do that, tell me a little bit about your background, how you got into the business, and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So it's actually a little interesting. I've had an odd path. I've got a degree in visual communication design. So I actually specialized in graphic design in school. Worked in computer animation, mostly in the entertainment and advertising world, actually out of school. So completely unrelated. Was working as a freelance animator in the Baltimore area, but always had a very technical mindset. So my portfolio that I was developing on my own had a very technical lean to it. It was very vehicle centric and just had a lot of examples that I guess appealed to the folks at SEA. I actually just happened to get a call one day while I was freelancing, and they said, "Hey, we saw your work. Are you interested in a full-time job in the forensics field?" And it just took off from there. And when I started at SCA back in 2009, it was demonstrative evidence. So we were really just focusing on animations, visuals, visual aids, 3D modeling, that kind of thing. But then in 2010, the company picked up 3D laser scanning, which is very detailed, very accurate reality capture system and tools that really changed the game in terms of what we could do with 3D modeling, 3D animation, and also video analysis and photo analysis.
Yeah.
So since 2010, my group, the Imaging Sciences Group, which I lead at SCA, has really taken on a much more dramatic analysis role. We still do all the animations, we still do all the visuals, we still do all the graphics and 3D modeling and everything. But a lot of our work now is very analysis driven. And a whole lot of that is based in video. So video photo analysis. I'd say probably at least half of our workflow now is just doing 3D analysis of surveillance footage and photos, police photos, whatever 2D imagery someone might have, where there's information in the video, in the photo, and we need to pull some details out of it that you can't get just by looking at it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, to me, it's crazy to see technology and all the things that you can do now that you couldn't do back in 2009. And what's even scarier is the things that are coming down the pipe, all the things that, we're going to be able to do that we can't do, we can't do now, but next year, look out. And do you get called in to do analysis on like deep fake videos to try and determine if they're, legit or not?
I haven't yet, but the yet is the big word there. Because like you said, technology is changing. The amount of that kind of video that's out there now is just growing. It's getting easier and easier. I think there's websites now where you can generate deep fakes really easily.
Right.
So the sophisticated stuff is getting easier and easier. That's the thing with technology; it's all getting easier and cheaper.
Yeah.
So I haven't gotten into that realm yet, but I will not be surprised at all if it starts coming across my desk.
Sure. And you guys cover all the United States, correct?
We do, yeah. So SCA is nationwide. We've got 12 offices around the country.
Mm-hmm.
Our headquarters is in Columbus. I'm out of our Baltimore office. The furthest west we actually have a physical office is Denver, but from there and from some of our other middle of the country offices, we do service the West Coast as well.
So would you say the video analysis that you guys are doing, is it more like, here's a video of an accident that took place and we need like 3D rendering of it, or is it more criminal based? Like what typically is the type of clientele caseload that you get?
Yeah, most of our caseload, and I'll speak pretty much just to my group there, is SCA really handles anything and everything. Most of the work that my group does has historically been civil litigation based. So yeah, vehicle accidents are a really common one, but also premise liability. So we do a lot of video analysis of trip and falls and slip and falls. Someone claiming they slipped at some retailer. We can do an analysis of surveillance footage of that and determine, well, are their body mechanics consistent with a slip, or is it more consistent with a tripping motion?
Right.
Were they actually where they tripped? Was it actually near this exposed feature that they're claiming they tripped on, or were they 3 feet away? That kind of thing.
Right.
But we have also gotten involved in some criminal cases. I've used the 3D analysis process that we've mentioned on a couple of criminal cases. We had one early on in my career, actually, where we were using it to identify the height of some shooters that we saw in a video and compare that derived height to some suspects that were in custody. So yeah, we do get involved in the criminal side. We've actually got, we're working on a case right now that I can't go into details about, but it's with state prosecutors out of one of our offices. Nice. On a criminal case, doing this type of analysis. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can only think that it'll just get more and more. And even now with law enforcement wearing body cameras and things like that, you can see that there's a real need for this type of forensic work, and the value of it, I think, is pretty amazing.
Absolutely, yeah, and the cost benefit ratio is balancing out too. Again, historically, most of our work has been in the civil litigation side because historically the work has been a little more expensive than, say, prosecutors or private investigators might be able to foot the bill for. But technology is getting cheaper and the processes are getting faster and easier. So we're able to do things more efficiently, more effectively at a lower cost than what we might have been able to do 8 years ago. So sure. We're starting to see some of the detailed analysis that may have used to been reserved for bigger cases, private clients, civil litigation stuff where they had multi-million-dollar claims and could spend the money. We're starting to see more and more cases that are smaller budgets and smaller exposures, and criminal and defense attorneys and prosecutors being able to take more advantage of the technology in these processes.
Right. So how did COVID affect you guys? I mean, obviously, courts are shut down and there's no trials going on. Did you notice a slowdown in work, or was it something where, we're just going to keep processing all this stuff because they're going to need it eventually?
Yeah, it was more the latter, particularly with my group. In the Imaging Sciences group, we were as busy as ever from the start of COVID. In fact, I think the first quarter during COVID, that April, May, June quarter was one of our busiest in the history of the group. Wow. One of the things that makes the work we do kind of easy in that environment is it's all computer based. So the fact that SCA was working remotely, so we were all working from our homes. Didn't really affect our ability to do the work. It impacted us a bit in our ability to get out to scenes and do site documentation and take photographs and do 3D laser scanning out on site. But as far as being able to do the analysis, to do the video, to do the modeling, to do graphics, visuals, whatever else it might be, it really didn't affect us much.
Okay, so you guys are going out with like survey equipment with the big laser tripod things and grid mapping everything, huh?
Yeah, it's a big part of what we do. We use a technology that's a little different than the total stations. It's any officers, anyone that's has some accident reconstruction background is probably familiar with total stations, and you stand out there with one guy's got the device on a tripod, and someone else has to stand there with the stick way down the road. Mm-hmm. We use a different technology that captures infinitely more data. For anyone that's familiar with total stations, you might spend hours on a site and walk away with 40 or 50 or 100 data points. We capture 44 million points per scan location, which takes all of about 10 minutes per scan. Crazy. So we're, again, technology. It's intense.
Too much information, literally. That's so cool. I was at a reconstruction recently within the last year, and the guy who showed up, he didn't have a regular car. He had this big old, it was like a Expedition or something, and he opened up the back of it, and it was just like loads and loads of equipment. And he pulled out this gridding system, and it probably took him about a half hour to grid the whole car. But I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing. Like every ding and dent and bump, it's going to catch all that stuff. It's so amazing. So we're going to take a break right here and check in with some of our sponsors. So everybody sit tight and we'll be right back. I want to talk to everybody today about Scopenow.com. Scopenow has been a big-time sponsor of this program for quite some time, and I just love their service. I've been using them since the beginning. I'm one of their beta customers, and it's been so awesome to see them grow into the business that they are today, and just how they just keep reinventing themselves and pushing themselves to get more and more information. What it comes down to is Scopenow is a tool that you definitely need to use if you do social media investigations, any internet research, and really spending less time digging around and looking for information. I think is one of the best points of how Scopenow can help you. Their AI platform, their analytics are amazing. You really get an idea of what you need. You're reducing the time, you're reducing the manpower that you're spending on doing this research, because they're essentially doing it for you, and they're doing it correctly, which is most important. One of the new things that they're actually offering is this flagging system where you can flag behaviors and really highlight and look out for fraud. If you're doing a lot of fraud research, this is a fantastic tool, and you can set up alerts. So you have particular people that you're looking at, you can actually set up alerts to get notifications when the criteria that you set up is actually is flagged and goes off. It's really, really amazing. And their relationship and association analytics are top notch, really cutting edge and really, really cool. When they brought that out on version 3, it was a game changer. I mean, really being able to see how people interact together and having that relationship, analysis is really, really something that's cool. One of the other things about being involved with Scopenow is their ability to offer webinars. Their team is cutting edge on putting together and getting out really, really great content. If you're a member of Scopenow, if you know who they are, you've seen them around on LinkedIn, you'll know that they're constantly doing webinars on these new websites that are coming out, and they're really staying on top of it. And don't forget, any reports that you generate, you can actually white label those reports and put your own logos on and really make them look professional, which could equate to more billing for you as well. So check them out today. It's www.scopenow.com. They're a great, great company. They should be one of the tools in your toolbox, along with whatever kind of search engines you do. You need to make sure that Scopenow is a part of that suite. Scopenow.com.
Check out the PI Institute of Education at piinstitute.com. Since 1989, Kelly Riddle has been teaching on subjects such as surveillance, nursing home investigations, insurance fraud, domestic investigations, hidden assets, and accident scene investigations. The PI Institute of Education is a featured learning partner in the investigatorstoolbox.com. So check out the free content on the site, then visit the Institute for more great savings on additional classes. I bet you didn't know that Alex Skip Guru Price held an exclusive training event last week for Investigators Toolbox members. The subject was skip tracing, of course, and license plate recognition software. If you're a Toolbox member, be sure to access the exclusive content. And congrats to our host, Matt Spaier. He was just named Investigator of the Year by PI Magazine for 2021. Matt will be discussing this honor on next week's show as we wrap up the year. You can get a copy of this great issue at pimagazine.com. Congratulations, Matt. Well deserved.
And welcome back to PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. Today we're joined by John Swanson from SEA Limited. John, welcome back to the program.
Good. Glad to be here.
Okay, so before we jumped out, we were talking about accident reconstruction and these guys having these grid screeners to look at cars and capture data points. And you were talking about millions of data points, and it's just amazing how technology allows to have these really finite measurements being done. Let's say I'm an average investigator and I've got a video that I need analyzed. So attorney says, "Hey, we really need to look at this video," or I'll give you a great example. I got a blurry license plate. So can you help me identify this vehicle? What would you suggest the average investigator do? How do they get started with doing this type of work?
Sure. So the simple answer there is to reach out to someone who's got some video expertise. Mm-hmm. One thing that I've learned in the last couple of years especially is that the world of video is so much more complex than you might expect. Anyone that followed the Rittenhouse trial and the whole question there about the quality of the drone video and all of that, it got a little bit of exposure to just how complex that is. Mm-hmm. So my first recommendation would be see if you can find a video expert. As far as diving into it, if you wanted to take it on yourself or even just what the video expert would then do, there's a ton of different software out there that is built specifically for video analysis and even more specifically forensic video analysis. Mm-hmm. Some of them aren't cheap. Some of the software that we use at SEA is a few $1,000s per license, but it's got some really great capabilities in terms of being able to pull out as much data as possible. Yeah. That example of I've got a blurry photo of a license plate. Can you make it really clear? Historically, has actually always been my example of here's what isn't actually possible.
Exactly. Yeah. But they did it on CSI Miami. Why can't we do that?
Yeah, exactly. It's that Hollywood effect and that TV magic effect. Yeah. And realistically, today there's still, even now with today's technology and today's software, there are still limitations to it. But some of the software out there will even specifically advertise, we can take a blurry photo of a license plate and improve it. And that's really the key word, is improve it. Yeah. So there are things that you can do, and there's algorithms that the software will use to help stabilize the video. Because a lot of the times that blurriness is because the video is shaking around, and that can be accounted for. Mm-hmm. There's brightness and contrast and all these different enhancements and filters that you can apply that will at least make it more clear. Mm-hmm. There are also filters that will do its best to guess at, if you blow it up, if you enhance it and everything, to guess what those pixels should be. And again, referring to the Rittenhouse trial and the questions about the video there, not the date, not to date the conversation. Yeah, but, that's fine. The questions there about, is this enhanced image actually the image that's captured versus a computer generated image? So that, there are some things to consider there, but the software can still make an effort to fill in those pixels and take a best guess at what those pixels are. So that at the end of the day, you have at least a more clear picture of what the license plate number is or what that person's face looks like, if you're trying to identify someone.
Yeah, and that's always one of the biggest challenges, I think, in my experience in dealing with these videos. Like you have an attorney, or the attorney has their client that says, "Oh, there's video cameras out there. Why you definitely should have this caught." And I've actually seen video of like a car making a right-hand turn and just mowing over a pedestrian. I mean, it was clear as day, other than the license plate. And it was like so frustrating that as hard as we tried, and I used companies like yours to go and do this stuff, we just it couldn't determine with 100% certainty what the plate was, and there were some possibilities. It was there was a lot of legwork to be done on this. I think what ended up happening on the most recent case was we had gotten another independent video where the vehicle had actually stopped. And because it wasn't moving, we were able to get what we needed to do. And lighting is always an issue too, right? You have an accident at 4 o'clock in the morning, lighting is going to be, trash. So it's a lot harder to try and ID something that way, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the biggest one is just image resolution. Yeah. I mean, surveillance cameras have been all over the place for a long time, and some of them are on the older side, so we can get video, but it might be 480p resolution. So if it's surveillance footage from an ATM or a gas station that's trying to focus on gas pumps, but it captures an accident that's in the intersection off in the corner, we capture the video captured the accident, but with such little resolution that you can see what's happening. But yeah, it can be really tough to get that kind of detail out. Right. The good news there is that we're seeing more and more this HD video, high resolution video. So more and more often, we are actually getting video where we have the resolution that's necessary to pull out some of that detail.
Yeah, that could be a game changer, potentially, which is neat. And one of the other challenges too is the trade-off, right? So now you've got a high definition camera that's going to get you all your detail, but now you're on the clock because you've got 10 days or maybe even less before that image turns over, right? So being able to go and get a copy of it is a challenge, because a lot of times an attorney won't be hired for a week or two, and then by the time they review the file and say, "Oh, we got to get somebody out there," we're facing these problems that the videos are gone. It's either past that 30-day mark, or it's a high def camera where we don't even have 30 days. It's more like 14 days, right? So that's been one of the challenges we're dealing with. In fact, we've trained one of our clients right now that if it's an auto accident, just send the investigator out to do a site inspection as soon as the case is gotten in. And we've hit some real home runs with it, because it's a gamble. There may not be cameras out there, but if there are, we've been able to secure images, which has worked out quite well.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've done the same. We do our best to train our clients, get us out there as quickly as possible, or at least get someone out there as quickly as possible. We consider ourselves a rapid response company, so we're 24/7, 365. We'll go out to an accident scene. We'll go out to whatever retailer and grab the video, document the scene, do whatever we need. Our favorite thing is when we can get out there and all the vehicles are still in place for an accident. Right? That's money.
Yeah. And those especially on the tractor trailer cases, because that's, those are, there's insurance involved, and there's adequate insurance. And, that is so important, that all that stuff is captured. So, really important. But, the other thing I want to mention too is, with buses, right? Mm-hmm. So in the city, New York City, all the buses have cameras on them, and people think, 30-day window, no problem. But what ends up happening internally is a guy drives a bus. He comes off his shift and he hands the keys to another guy, and that guy gets in, or gal, and they work their shift, and they come off and they hand off their keys to the next person. So the bus is actually never shut off. So the way their camera system is running, it's running continuously. And it's actually not a 30-day window. It's more like a 21-day window, because of the frequency, that there's no rest period, and the amount of footage that they're able to do. So that's been another challenge that we've faced. And getting a notice to preserve letter or a FOIL request in and having it processed within a 30-day window or a 20-day window is not likely, which is another challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a good point. It's something that I actually find that a lot of people aren't aware of, and a lot of attorneys aren't aware of, that, yeah, a lot of those DVR systems are only recording when the software notices a change in what it can see. So if it's an empty bus, if it's bus might not be the right example. If it's an empty storefront, if it's an empty street, it's not actually recording until something comes into frame. So yeah, that's where it's able to store its 30 days. But like you said, yeah, if it's just constantly recording and there's no pause, then yeah, we've seen that as well be an issue.
Yeah, I mean, storage is always the issue, right? So as the technology gets better and you can basically have a supercomputer on your wrist now. You figure that, the chips get smaller and smaller and can handle more and more. You can see that getting better, but it's kind of where we are today, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And why it comes back to get someone out there. And I think you alluded to this already. It's a small investment, right? It doesn't take much effort. It doesn't take much time to just have someone go out there and put the video on an SD card, or take photos of the scene, document the site, 3D laser scan it even, and then have that data if you need it. And maybe 3 out of 4 times you end up not needing it, but that one time that you do need it, it's going to save you so much hassle and save you so much effort, and could be the difference in a case or a claim, that it's worth the couple of times that you captured the data and ended up not needing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, speaking of technology and things that are heading in the right direction, what are some of the things that you think are coming down the pipe that's going to make your job easier?
It's really just software and hardware. The ease of use, the accessibility, and the I'll say robustness of it all.
Right.
I look at something like the drones. So used to be, drones were hard to get into. They were expensive. You were spending 4 figures easily just to get a decent drone. And then when it comes to being able to fly commercially, of course, you have to be a licensed FAA pilot, and the process for the commercial exemptions was a pain. So just the accessibility to that, I think, is a trend that we're going to see continue on this path, where it's just going to get easier and easier and cheaper and cheaper. I mean, you can get a drone that'll capture 1080p video now for $100. And getting your license is now super easy. I think it's $150 or $175 now to take the test, and within like 5 or 10 hours of studying, anyone can pretty much go and pass this test to be able to go and fly. So it's
right.
Accessibility to that technology, not just drones, but really everything else as well, is going to make the big difference. And then, like I said, the software side, some of the things that we used to do that would take hours and hours of work to do a certain type of analysis now might take us a fraction of that time, just because the software has caught up. The developers have figured out the things that everybody wants to be able to do with their software. They've made it easier, they've made it faster, and the software is getting cheaper and more accessible. So I think the biggest impact on my industry and what the work that my group is going to be able to do is, we're going to be able to do all the same stuff, but we're going to be able to do it more accurately. We're going to be able to do it cheaper, and we're going to be able to do it faster, which means we'll be able to do more of it.
So from an evidentiary perspective, how does something like that work with you guys? Do you get called in to testify on things? Do you give certificate of authentication? Are you got to go in and basically talk about the process of how you're doing these enhancements and what you're doing? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I have testified on a couple of cases, more specifically to the analysis that we're doing rather than just the enhancements. I do video enhancement a ton. I've got some clients that come to me just for that. And usually in those cases where all we're doing is enhancing it, I've found historically that an affidavit takes care of it, right? I can just write something up that says, here's the software I used, here's the filters that I applied. It's something that anyone can go and take that same software and recreate. So it's really straightforward. As long as we can say, here's what we did and outline it. Just a simple, couple paragraph document usually takes care of the evidentiary requirements for video enhancement.
Right.
The analysis side is where I've had to go in and testify, and that's where we have to explain how we can take 3D data that we capture. So there's millions and millions of data points that we're capturing on site. We can align that to the video, to the photograph. And once we have that aligned, we're able to match the position of everything in 3D. So if it's a car, we can figure out what the speed is. If it's a person who trips and falls, we can figure out where they were when they fell. We can analyze a person's gait, their walking speed. We can tell you how big something is that was there at the time of the video, but isn't there now, where it is in space. Having to explain that process is the one that we've had to testify on. But even that, it's once you see it, it's a really straightforward process. It's explained very easily, and especially when we use visuals, which of course is the other thing my group does. So from an admissibility standpoint, I've never had any issues with the analysis or the data that underlies it being admitted.
Yeah, to me, it would seem that if they're starting to question that stuff, it's like they're nitpicking. Like really, are you just trying to, generate more billing hours here? Like, what's the deal?
Yeah, when they're grasping at straws, it's a good sign.
No, exactly. Yeah, that's really interesting stuff. So I think like the analysis that you were talking about before with, somebody falls down and is it a trip or slip? Like there's definitely value in that. I think that the mechanics of how an accident happened, that can really line up liability or disprove a theory like really easy. It's kind of like a game changer, right?
Absolutely. And, it starts to get into some of the other things that SCA does. My group can figure out what a person's body position is and their expertise that's out there. We've got biomechanical experts and there are biomechanical experts. I don't just want to talk about SCA. There are biomechanical experts out there who can, take a look at that 3D model that we generate from the 3D analysis of a video and then say, well, yeah, this person's body position is consistent with tripping forward or falling back. I have a great example on our Vimeo page, actually, of a claim where someone was exiting a roller skating rink. And they claimed that as they left the skating surface, they tripped on the hole that the bolt for the door goes in to keep the door shut.
Right.
They're saying they tripped on that, and that quote unquote defect in the floor is why they fell and the source of their injuries. Well, we did a 3D analysis of the video. We're able to track their body position frame by frame, hand that over to our biomechanical experts, and then they can analyze that and say, well, based on the person's center of gravity, where their feet were, the mechanics of how they fell. This one was really obvious because they actually fell backwards, not tripped forwards.
Yeah.
They were able to say, definitively, this person was already falling based on their center of gravity relative to their feet before they even got to that hole that they're claiming they tripped on. And the mechanics of their fall were consistent with their feet slipping out in front of them rather than tripping and falling. And then even more, because of the 3D analysis, we were able to say that they were 1.5 feet away from that hole that they said they tripped on. So it all kind of came together to just really shoot down the claim.
That's amazing. So what are some of the mistakes you think investigators make in collecting this information before it ends up in your hands?
I would say focusing too narrowly.
Mm-hmm.
We see it all the time, and I always give engineers and officers a hard time when I'm reviewing things with them. The trend for the folks in those positions is to, or I should say, the mindset that they're in is to get a big overall photo of something and then get really narrow in when they're documenting. So I just wanted to see this scrape mark or this gouge mark. Mm-hmm. So just having too narrow of a focus and not capturing the bigger picture, not capturing, pulling back and getting a photo of a little more clearly of where that scratch is on the ground or on the vehicle or whatever it might be.
Context. It's always context. You're
exactly. And then that's one of the reasons why 3D scanning has become such a great tool is even if you're not trying to, you end up capturing the full environment. So that's one where especially as claims go on for years and years, we see it all the time where when someone's out on site documenting, everyone that's involved with the case is focused on this thing. And maybe that thing is in this corner of the room. And then 6 months or 2 years later, we realize, oh, well, there's also this other thing in the room that might have contributed, or this other thing on the other side of the street that might have contributed.
Sure.
But no one thought to document it
Yeah.
at the time.
Yep.
With 3D laser scanning, you've got all that documented. So as far as what investigators could do to really make sure that they're not falling into a trap is use tools that really document the entire environment, the entire scene, the entire area around the subject matter, and not just have that laser focus.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the things that I always preach to my team when we go out and do this stuff is don't even take your camera out when you first get there. Just spend 5 or 10 minutes of just walking around and looking and really soaking everything in and trying to understand how the accident happened, right? So have the report with you, obviously, and just understand the mechanics of, all right, this one came from this direction. Like, was there a fence or a tree limb that may have, created an obstruction for view, things like that, right? So just really understanding what you're looking for before you even start, because so many of us just want to get in and get out and get on to the next job, and you can't do it. You got to take the allotted time to do what you need to do. And I think that point you make with that focusing in on just that small area, like that contexting, it's a big problem. I remember that I used to get the photos from the accident investigation squads in New York City. And this is before really digital. So these guys were shooting on regular film, and it's like stuff is out of focus, it's at late at night, and then even when the video got there and they had the video cameras on the cameras, they're shooting video, but there's no context to it. It's just like all over the place. And I'm like, who's training these guys? Like, this is really bad. Like, does someone even look to see if this was in focus before they turn the camera on? It's nuts.
Yeah. And, that attention to detail that's something that I preach to my team is attention to detail, and also organization.
Mm-hmm.
Say that having the context, it's also just as bad if, you capture all this data, you take all these photos, you get all these videos, and then you sit on it because the case is lasting, however long it is, and you come back to it 6 months or a year later, and then you have to refamiliarize yourself with it. And that takes time and energy, and it's just much more efficient to have a plan in place to organize all of your information, all of your data, all your documents from the start.
Yeah, I mean, it's a matter of letting your photos or video tell a story, right? That's super important. There have been defect cases that I've worked on, and something that we do with our team now all the time also is, in addition to taking photos, that we are shooting off a little bit of a video, right? So I had a case where there was a stone paver that was in front of a movie theater, and it had become loose, and it was a tripping hazard. And the photos would never show that, right? So the insurance adjuster was like, balderdash. I'm saying this is not true. And then my client played them, the 15-second video of or 20-second video of movement on there, in context, out and close and whatever. And they settled the case. It's done. Here's liability. All right, how much do you want? What's the value of the case, right? And I think the attorney spent less than $700 on me to do that stuff, and I think he got about $100,000 on that case. And it was like he didn't have to litigate it. It's like, here's our evidence, right? That's basically proving liability. Which is why we're all able to do what we do. That kind of stuff, and using services like yours to do that could be a real game changer, because you can take something that is, there's an idea or a thought of how something could have happened, and here's this image, and maybe it shows, maybe it doesn't, but being able to clean it up and definitively say it's a certain way is, with the 3D data points and all the other stuff behind it, is pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And at SCA, we like to say that we're truth seekers.
Yeah.
right? So it doesn't matter whether it's good news or bad news. We want to find out what the truth is.
The news.
And that information, no matter what side of a claim or a case you're on, is valuable. And if having the facts, having that data, having that analysis, having the truth means not having to spend time and money on litigation, not having to spin your wheels on going back and forth in a claim. Even though you have to spend some money to get that truth, at the end, more often than not, it ends up saving time and money in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. So as far as the analysis goes of this stuff, what are some of the other things that you guys take a look at when you're doing the analysis on videos?
Oh, as far as the different types of things, and like I said, the subject matter of our 3D analysis in particular is kind of never ending. Everything from, again, the obvious ones are vehicle accidents. Where in the lane is a vehicle approaching an accident? How fast are they going? But then we can also take that, and once we have that analysis done, that all exists in a 3D space. We're recreating this in 3D. So we can start to analyze, okay, what could the different drivers see? What could the different pedestrians or witnesses see? Be able to analyze that incident from all the different angles. Yeah. So if there are witness testimony, we can do a 3D analysis of a video to corroborate that or disprove witness statements. There's also just identifying evidence. So one thing that we get a lot is police photos of whatever an incident is. We'll use the vehicle accidents as an example, just because, again, we get so many of those. I've got so many examples I can speak to. Right. So we'll get police photos from an accident that happened 3 years ago. We don't have any other information on the vehicle's final rest, on if there were pedestrians involved, where their final rest was. Not to get gruesome, but if there are bloodstains, if there's any biological evidence, if there are skid marks, if there's gouge marks, we might not have any information on any of that except for these 3-year-old photos.
Yeah.
Well, we can go out and do a 3D laser scan of the scene as it is now, match that to the photos, and now we can start to map out all of that evidence and get a more full picture of the entire scene. So in the case of, say, a vehicle hitting a pedestrian, we can say, were there skid marks? How long are those skid marks? What does that imply? And what can we calculate from that about not only the speed of the vehicle, but the braking, and, where was the pedestrian? What were their lines of sight of each other?
Sure.
Then that same thing applies to really just about anything else where we have photos or videos of something, of an event, of something that's physically in the photo or video that just isn't there now. We can use this process to reposition that and get all those answers. So again, I use vehicles and pedestrians just because they're my most common examples.
Sure.
But yeah, if it was in the photo, if it's in the video and it's not there now, we can figure out where it was.
Sure. I'm getting a little crazy with these reels on like Instagram and Facebook of like motor vehicle accidents. Like for some reason they keep showing up on my feeds, and it's like, it's becoming obsessive for me, because I'm like, okay, I'm trying to figure out who's responsible and how this happens. But then it gets to the point where I'm like, this is my work life. Like, I got to stop like looking at stuff in my personal life that should be only in my work life, because it's becoming too much. But it's like all the rage these days. These accident videos are all over the place.
Yeah, I think talking about the changes in technology, that's people's fascination with accidents and seeing things, the rubbernecking when you see an accident on the side of a road, and
sure,
all that, that's, people have always been fascinated with it. Just now technology allows people to see more of it all the time, right on that supercomputer in their pocket.
Exactly. So, all right, John, we're gonna wind down here. This was really cool, man. This is very interesting, and just really nice to hear a perspective of somebody that actually does the work with the videos, and giving us some pointers on how we can be better at getting you what you need, so everybody wins on this stuff. I think is really neat. How do folks get a hold of you if they had any questions?
So the simplest way is to look me up on our website, which is sealimited.com, and that's spelled out, so sealimited.com. You can also email me, which is jswanson@sealimited.com. But on our website, you can get resources not just to me and my group. You can look up any other types of professionals. So all of our biomechanical engineers, vehicle accident reconstructionists, we've got metallurgists, toxicologists, medical illustrators, the access to our full slew of experts and people who can assist. And then another great resource that's worth checking out is our Vimeo page, which just has examples of some of the visuals and 3D analysis and animations and graphics work that we can do, which is vimeo.com/SEALTD.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll have links to all that stuff in the show notes. John, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on and being a part of the show here. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We're winding down on the year. It's been an amazing year, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. And we'll catch everybody next week on the next show.
A special thank you to John for coming on and discuss this great technology. Awesome episode. We also want to thank Crosstrack, Scopenow, and PI Institute of Education for sponsoring this show. Please support our great supporters, and make sure you catch next week's episode where Matt discusses the Investigator of the Year Award from PI Magazine. Have you thought about joining Investigator's Toolbox yet? Time's running out to save 25% off membership. Use code HOLIDAY21 and save $50 to join. This discount ends at the end of the month. Starting in January, this price will only be available for renewing members. And if you have a question or a comment about the show, email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com, and you can also find him on LinkedIn, Instagram like I did, and Facebook. We want your feedback to bring you the best shows possible. We'll be back next Monday with one last show for 2021. Make sure you tune in. Please stay safe out there, everyone. Happy holidays.